Hey everyone, good Friday morning from Biloxi Beach, Mississippi. This is Hurricane Hal with a Friday morning tropical weather update. All eyes on the southwestern Gulf of Mexico, where we're looking at the potential development of Tropical Storm Wilfred. We're going to get right away to what this could mean for the Gulf Coast. In fact, let's go right over here to a sand map. A lot of people love these sand maps, so we're going to go straight away to it. And here we have a sand map on the coast here of Mississippi. This sand map is courtesy of the sand in Biloxi and this piece of driftwood that I found over here by the dunes. So Wilfred will likely form, and this frisbee represents Wilfred, not the eye of Wilfred, but if you can picture maybe the circulation of it. So it looks like Wilfred will form here in the southwestern Gulf of Mexico and drift towards the north by Saturday as a tropical storm, and then likely start drifting. There likely will be a high pressure, very weak high pressure over the northern Gulf, and this should drift Wilfred, they think, most likely towards the west, potentially tracking towards the southern Texas coast or the central Texas coast, maybe somewhere moving towards South Padre or Corpus Christi. Now, a couple things to keep in mind. There's a lot of uncertainty with these stalled out storms. It's going to move very slowly. And so the more slowly a system moves, the harder it is to really predict the track and the direction. So there's a lot of uncertainty with it. If it does drift towards the South Texas coast or the central Texas coast, keep in mind these stalled out systems near the coast are extremely lopsided. So when Hurricane Harvey in 2017 had these huge impacts in Houston, Galveston area, the center of circulation was actually, came in near Rockport, Port Aransas, but then as it drifted up the coast, the center of circulation was in there by Port Lavaca and Port O'Connor, and it was just streaming in tremendous amount of rain on the east side. I'm very concerned to see a storm stalled out along the south central or the central or south Texas coast. When these storms stall out near the coast, what happens is the circulation actually wraps in a lot of dry air is coming in this way off the mainland and off of Mexico. And so the center of circulation on a stalled out system in Texas actually represents often the southern periphery of the impacts. The big impacts, as the circulation's coming like this, the big impacts are really to the north of the circulation. And so I'm really concerned with a stalled out Wilfred potentially moving very slowly Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, approaching the coast there. Could see some big impacts from Corpus north, really through Houston, Galveston, Bolivar Peninsula. Comparing this circulation with Harvey, I looked at the size of the storm. So we do think that this Wilfred will likely intensify into a tropical storm. And the latest advisory from the Hurricane Center actually makes it a Category 1 hurricane as it drifts towards the coast. So this category system has everything to do with the maximum sustained winds. It doesn't tell you that much about the rainfall or storm surge, and it doesn't tell you much about the size. I was looking at the size forecast, and something that concerns me, the extent of tropical storm force winds with Wilfred are forecast to extend out to the northeast 150 nautical miles. That's larger than Harvey. Harvey's extent of tropical storm force winds was only 120 miles when it was approaching the coast, and Sally this last week was about 110. So I'm concerned to see a stalled out Wilfred with a really large wind field. That will push a really prolonged storm surge here along along the central and upper Texas coast. We could expect not to see maybe a massive storm surge if it stays offshore, but potentially a prolonged 2, 3, 4 foot storm surge for days at a time. This weekend, as Wilfred is setting up here in the southwest Gulf of Mexico, we're going to have a high pressure over kind of Texas and Louisiana, and that's going to produce, we're going to get these really pretty strong winds coming out of the northeast. This weekend along the upper Texas coast, we're going to see 20 to 25 mile an hour sustained winds, and a northeast wind in the upper Texas coast will start piling up storm surge because water deflects to the right of the wind direction in the northern hemisphere. So really prolonged coastal impacts. Another possible blind side with this storm, if it were to track and come over here and maybe approach the coast south of Corpus Christi, Hurricane Harvey made landfall around Rockport, Port Aransas in 2017, but Corpus, just south of landfall, maybe 30 miles, really escaped the main impacts. If Wilfred comes in a little farther south, it may look in some ways like Harvey as far as a stalled out tropical system on the coast, but if it comes in a little farther south, it could actually produce a lot of flood impacts right in there by Corpus that has really escaped a lot of impacts over the last several decades. Hannah even was a little farther south of Corpus a couple of months ago. So this is a big concern. A lot of uncertainty with these slow-moving storms, but we're always concerned to see a system stalled out in the South Texas or the Central Texas coast. Do not look at the center of circulation. That's really the southern periphery of the impacts. Most of the impacts will be to the north of where the center comes in. A lot of the models do maybe by Tuesday-ish or Wednesday, then start to kick this out and, possibly move it up towards Louisiana. Again, there's just a lot of unknown right now, but the best I can do on the sand map right now is to show you that it does look like a system will form. It does look like it'll drift towards the Central or South Texas coast, and the impacts then, especially flood impacts, concern me north of the center of circulation. I'm concerned about Corpus, Port Lavaca, Freeport, all the way up through Houston, Galveston, Bolivar, and of course, Beaumont, Port Arthur, right? Think back to Harvey 3 years ago. A lot of the focus was the Central Texas coast. We kind of thought Beaumont, Port Arthur was out of it, and they ended up getting more than 60 inches of rain in parts of the metro area, devastating flooding. So this is always a concern. Again, not trying to hype this up. Definitely don't want to scare people, but we've seen a lot of these stalled out systems in recent years, and they can bring a big flood impact. The last thing I wanted to mention, the category system. Is it a category 1? Is it a category 2? A tropical storm is the same kind of system. It's just the winds are not hurricane force. But a tropical storm can dump 30, 40, 50 inches of rain. Last year we had Tropical Storm Imelda. It was not a hurricane, but it dumped 43 inches of rain near Fannin and Winnie and those areas over by Beaumont and Port Arthur. So we don't need a hurricane to produce a massive flood event. That's something we've definitely seen in recent years. The best we can do with this is wait and really see what's going to happen. Try to get out in front of it. Try to get your supplies. Any ways that you can, flood-proof your house. Also, walk the streets and look at the gutters and try to clean out any drainage, and take photographs too. If you have a property by the coast or you're going away from your home, take photographs and some video. If you do flood, it can really help you afterwards. And also, I travel along the Gulf Coast all the time in flood resiliency projects here, working with CNC. All the time I hear people say, oh, my house has never flooded before. There's always a first time, and often their house would have flooded if they were there 50 years ago. In human mind, 20 years is a long time, but in environment, it's really not. So this is Hal Needham, hurricane scientist with CNC. I'm in Biloxi today. We're actually building a real-time flood information system to monitor floods like Wilfred, and we may have some new products that we can launch for this storm. Again, we can't stop the flooding, but we can hopefully get out in front of it, make our communities more resilient, and be prepared. I'm in Biloxi. I'm signing off, and I'll tune in with you probably later today. Everyone have a fantastic Friday.